Hi, my name is Alex Smith. I'm the CEO at KidCheck. Thanks for joining us on this video presentation on a topic that is really important to me and one that is often difficult or overlooked in most child care organizations, and that is taking a look at practical and easy ways to secure your children's ministry or child care area and provide the best experience possible for the parents that entrust their kids to your care. So if you think about all of the things that you have to do as a child care professional, providing for healthy meals, lesson planning, vacation Bible schools, all the other activities that you want to set up for the kids that are in your care, generally thinking about security is not on the top of the priority list. And that can be a challenge as you go forward. But one of the simplest and easiest things that you can do as a child care professional is find help that is close by to help in planning and preparing your organization as a secure facility. The first step to do is to try and identify folks within your organization that have law enforcement or former military backgrounds and start to build a security team that can come around you and help provide good advice and good guidance to securing your facility. So the first step that you want to do to find that trusted individual is to look for, again, somebody who's got a law enforcement or military background, somebody that has experience in securing facilities and dealing with the general public in their background. If you're in a church organization, one of the big mistakes that we see from time to time is when a children's pastor or the staff of the church decides to advertise to get folks involved in the security team, because you're going to have everybody that is interested in security or firearms or has any kind of aspirations of being an armchair deputy sheriff, if you will, are going to show up and want to be part of that organization. And while those people, their willingness to help is fantastic, one of the things that you want to be very concerned about is somebody that has professional experience and professional background to at least head up that particular team. So the idea is you want to find that trusted law enforcement member to establish your security team and then let them go ahead and build it. Let them network with the people that they know and find the people that would make the most sense to be on that particular team. Once you've got your team established, you really want to get to know them personally. They are your number one resource. Anytime there's an emergency, anytime there's an issue within your organization, those are your go-to folks. So you really want to be on a name-by-name basis with each one of those individuals so that you can call them out of a crowd within your organization to come and help when you need assistance. You also want to make sure that you equip your security team as well as key individuals in your children's ministry area with two-way radio communication so that, again, if there's an issue that comes up, you can get the fastest response time from those individuals and get the issue resolved as quickly as you can. Lastly, there is a ton of online resources available to you to help provide policy support, tips and tricks, and basic information on how to build your security team. And one of the best that I've seen is available at www.cppssite.com, and that is the Center for Personal Protection and Safety. This is a group of law enforcement professionals that have worked in the military and civilian areas helping secure organizations like college campuses, churches across the nation and across the world. These guys have an excellent site that has lots of resources and lots of information. So if you need more information on building a security team and how that should look within your organization, this is a fantastic site to go to. Let's spend a couple of minutes talking about your facilities. I fully understand that not every organization has a choice of how your facility is laid out or designed. And unfortunately, most organizations are in buildings and environments that were never intended to be a secured type facility. A lot of times they're older buildings or classrooms in another organization. But there are a couple of things that you can do, even if you're not in an ideal situation, to try and make your facility as secure as possible for the kids in your care. The first thing to do is, if you have a choice, you want to make sure that your classrooms for your kids are all in very highly visible areas. A lot of times, one of the big mistakes that some churches will make is to put the children's ministry in the back of the church because they're afraid of the noise and chaos that kind of comes from that particular area. But unfortunately, that's a great way to invite trouble into that particular space. So you really want to make it as visible as possible. At my church, for example, the children's ministry area is right in the very front of the building, so the parents can see the area and see what's going on. It's very, very highly visible. Next thing to look at is if your classrooms don't have windows, and you really want to prefer rooms that do have windows, again, for that transparency. But you want to make sure that you at least keep the doors open if there are no windows in that particular facility. In those classrooms where the doors are open, it's very simple to use a child protective gate that goes across the door to help keep the kids in one side of the facility and provide the physical barrier from folks entering the rooms that shouldn't be there. So keep the doors open and put that child gate up. You really want to do your best to control access to the individual classrooms as well. Even if that's not possible, for example, at my church, we have a very large open bullpen area where the classrooms go around the outside of that particular area. We were able to purchase some inexpensive floor-to-ceiling wall partitions that we can move into place to provide a secure layer between the foyer and the main access of that area and of those classrooms. So solutions like that work great to helping control the flow of kids and the flow of adults in and out of your children's ministry area. You also want to do your best to limit the number of access and entry points within your child care area. In my church's particular instance, we were able to put in those partition walls. We've got 2 doors, one's an entrance and one's an exit. And we have security personnel from our security team that can man each of those entryways to make sure that the folks that are in those particular areas should be in those areas, and the folks that are out on the outside stay outside. Most importantly, when you're looking at a facility, you really want to look at it through the lens of just assuming the worst and then planning and applying common sense around that. If you can think ahead and think through what are the different areas of risk within your facility and address those as quickly as you can, that'll go a long ways to helping secure that particular child care facility. But you really want to also utilize your security team resources if you've put one in place already. So again, another set of eyes to look at your overall facilities and see how things are laid out and designed can go a long ways. All right, so this next slide is definitely my favorite slide. You want to make sure that we're prepared for any kind of medical emergency that you may have within your facility. Let's face it, you've got kids that are running around, and kids will be kids, and accidents do happen. One of the reasons that I like this slide, the picture of this young man here with the nice dent in his forehead, this is actually my son, and this happened at my church a few months ago. He was running around in one room that has one pole in it, and that pole is nice and square, and of course he, not looking, ran into that pole that's pictured below there just as fast as he could and took the pole right between his eyes. And unfortunately, the pole won, but he ended up with a smile on his face and a big dent in his forehead. When this happened, I was actually working as a member of the security team at the time. They were able to call me out of the service to come and address the issue and just kind of console my son. But it was a little frustrating because as I got out there, no one knew where the first aid kit was. Now, fortunately, he wasn't injured, just mostly his pride was hurt. It was a great point to talk to the other volunteers and the other security team members as to where is our first aid kit. Nobody really knew. So that's probably the number one thing that you want to make sure that you've got set aside, is that you know where your first aid kit is and that your volunteers know where the first aid kit is. We actually did end up finding it. It was in a filing cabinet back in one of the second grade classrooms. That one person that was on staff and working that day knew where it was. So we were able to institute some changes based on that and get it out visible so that folks knew how to respond to a medical emergency and make sure that everybody knew where that first aid kit was. You want to make sure that you have a system for identifying allergies among kids, whether it's colored stickers that you can place on child's name badges that have allergies, or some kind of a check-in system that can manage all that information for you and highlight the children that are at risk from having allergy problems. You know, it's so often that we hear from folks saying, well, I've got a small organization. I know all my kids. I know their parents and who should be allowed to pick them up and who doesn't. I know the kids that have severe allergy information that I need to pay attention to. But the truth is that in any organization, there's just an overwhelming amount of information, even with just a handful of kids, that having a good way to track medical conditions and medical information is so critical. We had an incident that happened at my church a few years ago when one of the children that was in the 2-year-old class was given a peanut cookie. And of course, the volunteer that was handling that particular child at that point didn't understand that child had an allergy to peanuts. So of course, the child ate the cookie, didn't think anything of it, and then about 10 minutes later, the crying starts, and the child starts getting very, very fussy and very agitated. Well, 45 minutes went by. Mom and Dad finally came back to pick up their child, and they immediately recognized the signs of early stages of anaphylactic shock. So they were able to get the child to the hospital immediately and start treatment to help prevent any kind of further damage from having that allergy take place. What was really kind of surprising about this was that this is actually the granddaughter of the senior pastor of the church. This is a child that was born and had been taken to that particular church from a very, very early age. everybody knew who she was, and yet not everybody, not all the volunteers knew about the medical history that was necessary for that particular child. So having a good system, again, to manage and alert of any kind of allergies is so critical. That even if you know everybody within your organization, do all of your volunteers know everybody within the organization? So good questions to ask. You want to make sure that if there's any incident within your child care facility that you document that as clearly as possible. Take lots of pictures. Make sure you have a way to put all of that information so that you can retrieve it again very quickly. One of the things that our church has done is our check-in system actually has the ability to document not only incidents but also all the information that may come along with a particular child, whether it's medical release forms, detailed information on that particular child, and it's all available online. So that if there is a medical emergency, rather than looking for all the paperwork to take with you to the hospital as you're transporting that child, we just transport the child to the hospital, and then once we're there, we can actually go online and collect all the information that we need to provide that back to make sure that the child has adequate care. And lastly, make sure that all of your volunteers and the security team are well trained in CPR. Oftentimes, if you're in a church organization, for example, there are people that are trained in how to teach classes on CPR or may be willing to provide that for you. So ask around, find a good resource to do that, but make sure folks know how to do that. It's just a great overall safety measure for both the kids and adults in your church. All right, so let's talk about volunteers. Getting good volunteers in for children's ministry, or sometimes any volunteers in children's ministry, is a very difficult thing to do. Oftentimes when somebody comes in, we're so excited that you've got somebody that is offered to help out within your organization that the temptation is to take them and put them right into an environment with the kids and get them plugged in immediately. But there's a couple of things that you're going to need to do, and some good discipline is going to come in handy here, again, to providing that secure infrastructure. The first thing you want to do is always background check your volunteers. It's very inexpensive to do. You can do this right online. It costs maybe $10 or $12 per volunteer. But you want to run that background check just to make sure and protect not only the kids and the organization, but you yourself from any kind of liability if there was a particular issue that came up out of that. Once you start running background checks, you want to make sure that you update those every 12 to 24 months. Just run them again. Again, it's another 10 or 12 bucks to do that. So it's very inexpensive, but sometimes if there's litigation happening on a particular individual, it may not show up on a background check right away. There may be a delay. So you want to just have an annual policy of rerunning background checks on your volunteers. You also want to look at instituting a mandatory waiting period before a volunteer is allowed to serve. And typically this can be anywhere from a month to 6 weeks perhaps. But you want to have a period in place where you can kind of observe them as the director of your children's ministry area or your child care facility, so that you can kind of observe them and see how they behave around others and make sure that they're a faithful volunteer within your organization. So it'll just give that one last opportunity to make sure that any issues that are going to arise you see early. Always use the rule of twos. Anytime that you're moving children between one location and another or taking kids to the restroom, you always want to make sure that you've got the rule of twos in place. And that is that you have 2 adults and at least 2 children at any given time. This just gives a lot of eyes on the situation to make sure that there aren't any particular issues that are going to come up later on as a result of having kids and adults together in small groups. So always make sure that you're managing and operating on the rule of twos. Make sure that you've got clear written policies in place. There's a great website that you can use to help gather information on how to put those policies together and different ideas of information that should be in those policies. It's www.stopitnow.com. And this particular site is designed to help stop and prevent child abuse from happening. But it's a great resource. They've got a lot of information on what child care policies should look like and different samples of information that should be in yours. So take a look at that, but make sure that you've got a well-written child care policy in place. Okay, so you've got your facilities well secured. You've got a great volunteer management system and policies in place. One of the things that you also need to look at is planning for emergencies, because let's face it, you're dealing with kids and emergencies are going to happen. So being prepared for it ahead of time is is absolutely critical, because the last place that you want to be thinking about and preparing for an emergency is while it's happening. This is also a great thing for you to involve your security team with as well, so that everybody's on the same page, knowing exactly what the plan is to take care of the kids and make sure that that the security can be maintained while an emergency may be going on. So you really want to sit down with your security team and plan out, what are we going to do in case of a fire or a flood or a medical emergency, and document that out so that everybody knows what to do and where to go to take care of that. One of the things that we have in my church that has helped us a lot in our emergency planning is that right next door to us we have a YMCA that's got a great tennis court. The tennis court is actually is chain link fence surrounded and has gates that can be closed on either side of that court. So in any case of an emergency, we're going to be taking the kids in an organized fashion over to that tennis court, where we can provide security off premise so that a first responder, whether it be fire or police, can address the emergency, but we can still maintain the security of the kids and provide an easy pickup system for mom and dad, so they can continue to use the same check-in, check-out process that we would have used in the building, but having those kids in a good contained area. You also want to look at planning for any kind of security incident. Medical emergencies will happen just because, again, you're dealing with kids. Security incidents can happen just, again, because of the adults that are parents to those kids. You have custody issues, parents that are angry, whatever it may be. Getting your security team, again, involved in those types of incidents can really take a big burden off of you in how you should be able to respond to that. But you really want to make sure that you know what to do before an emergency arises. You want to make sure that you are reacting to your plan and not reacting to the situation that's actually going on. So put that plan in place together. Make sure that your security team, your volunteers, know that there's a plan and that they know how to access it, and they should know what's in it as well. So make sure that you can have that plan published someplace so that folks can see what they need to be doing in case of that particular emergency. And having that plan in place can really save your church from liability issues after the fact. So that's a very critical thing for you to do. Okay, so we're on to the toughest slide of the entire presentation. And this slide is to follow your own policies. This is a really hard thing to do, because you're dealing with parents that you know. You have folks that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. You have these policies and procedures in place that sometimes parents don't understand right away, that it's really for their well-being and their child's well-being that you need to follow those. So you need to make sure that as you have your policies created, that you don't make exceptions for those, even if you know the child and parent. For example, I had one incident come up where a gal that was in my small group that I knew very well, and I knew her son very well, she lost her checkout receipt for Sunday morning. And so when she came to get her child, I knew which child to go get, but I still made them walk back to the check-in station and verify the information just like anybody else. And she was actually a little frustrated by that, as you can imagine, because, again, I knew who they were. But she was very thankful after the fact that I had followed the procedure, and she had a greater sense of confidence that the church is well established to make sure that her child is well protected. You want to make sure that you never leave a child alone with an adult. Again, go back to that rule of twos. That is so critical. Because, again, we want to have as many eyes on any particular situation as possible. So always use that rule of twos, whether it's taking a child to the bathroom or just taking a child down to the next classroom. Make sure you've got 2 adults and at least 2 kids at any given time. Don't be afraid to say no. A lot of parents may want to get their way through intimidation or raising their voice or whatever it is. It is your job to provide for the security and safety of their child while the child is in your care. So don't be afraid to say no. You got to make sure that you are standing firm on the policies that you've written and that you've created for your organization, and know that it's for the benefit of that particular child. Just keep in mind that you are the one that's responsible for the safety and security of the kids in your care, not the one parent that may cause a particular problem. Definitely want to make sure that you're keeping records of the attendance within your organization, and that you can pull those records back for many, many years, whether that's an online database where it's very simple and easy to retrieve that information, or just copies of your handwritten records. You always want to take attendance so that you know who was with who and where any particular child was at any given time. So that's a great thing to help protect your organization, again, from future liabilities. One of the other temptations that we see, especially in a church organization, you have kids that will arrive at all different times. And in your particular children's ministry, you may not be set up to handle and watch a child if they're dropped off really early or picked up very late. So again, make sure you have policies in place that state that, but then have a system that allows you to only check in kids after a given time when you actually have your volunteers in place and you are ready to handle those particular kids. You don't want to have children just running around randomly within your organization, again, because of there could be a medical incident or anything else that may pop up as a result. But most importantly, you just want to use common sense and just be safe. You know, modern technology has given us a lot of tools and a lot of great things to help make our jobs easier. And having a secure children's check-in system is a fantastic one. Here at KidCheck, we've got a complete check-in system available for your organization to really help make your life a lot easier, maintain all the information that you need to, and provide safety and security for the kids that are in your care. If you'd like any additional information about the KidCheck check-in system or just securing your facility in general, give us a call or look us up online at kidcheck.com. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thanks again for joining us. I appreciate the time.